The history of the Post Mauryan period of India. Contact with outside world. The most important political developments of the post-Maurya period was the onslaught of foreigners from the northwest. The first among them were the Bactrian Greeks, known in earlier Indian literature as Yavanas. The word was derived from the Old Persian from yana, signifying originally Ionian Greeks but later all people of Greek nationality. Indo-Greeks. The first to invade India were the Greeks or Bactrian Greeks, who were called the Indo-Greeks or Bactrian Greeks in the early 2nd century BC. The history of the Indo-Greeks has been reconstructed mainly on the evidence of their coins bearing legends in Greek and later in Brahmi as well. Demetrius, son of Euthydemus, king of Bactria, was perhaps the first foreign, Indo-Greek, king after Alexander who carried Greek arms into the interior of India. He reduced to submission a considerable portion of Afghanistan, the Punjab and Sindh. The best remembered of the Indo-Greek kings was Menander, 165–145 DC, who, as Milinda, attained fame in the Buddhist text Milindapano or the Question of Milinda, a catechismal discussion in Buddhism supposedly conducted by Menander and the Buddhist philosopher Nagasena, resulting in Menander's conversion to Buddhism. Menander stabilized Indo-Greek power, in addition to extending its frontiers in India. He had his capital at Sakala, modern Sialkot, in Punjab. There is little doubt that he attempted to conquer territory in the Ganges Valley, but he failed to retain it. He may well have attacked the Sungas in the Yamuna region, if not Pataliputra itself. A Brahmi inscription engraved on a Garuda pillar found Arbesnagar near Bilsa records that Antialcidas of Taxila sent an ambassador, named Heliodorus, to the court of Kasiputra Bhagabhadra, identified with the last but one Sunga, Bhagavata. Heliodorus in this inscription professes to be a follower of Vasudeva, associated with the god Vishnu. Himaeus was the last Indo-Greek ruler who has to maintain his precarious hold against the advancing menace of the Sakas, Parthians and the Uchis. Importance of the Indo-Greek rule. The Indo-Greeks were the first to issue coins which can be definitely attributed to the kings. They were the first to issue gold coins in India, which increased in number under the Kushans. The Greeks also introduced the practice of military governorship called strategos for maintaining the power of the new rulers over the conquered people. The Greek rule introduced features of Hellenistic art in the northwest frontier of India. The Gandhara art was largely Hellenistic in the beginning, but as time passed the style became more and more Indian and less Greek. The idea of representing the Buddha as a human being, idol worship, originated with the Greeks. The Greeks contributed to the development of the Indian theatre by the use of curtains, known as Yavanika, Sutradhara, stage manger, Nepathia, backstage, etc. 4. Indian astrology came to be influenced by Greek ideas, and from the Greek term horoscope was derived the term horosastra used for astrology in Sanskrit. The Shakas. The decline of the Greek kingdoms in the northwest coincided with an attack on Bactria itself by nomadic tribes from Central Asia. These tribes included the Scythians, who were primarily responsible for destroying Bactrian power. Close on their heels were the Uchis. Therefore the Scythians, known in the Indian sources as Shakas, moved from Bactria and invaded Iran and then the Greek kingdoms in India. By the middle of the 1st century BC, only a few Greek chiefs ruled in India, and the Shaka power extended as far interior into the country as Mathura. There were 5 branches of the Shakas with their seats of power in different parts of India and Afghanistan. One branch settled in Afghanistan. The second branch settled in Punjab with Taxila as its capital. The third branch settled in Mathura, where it ruled for about 2 centuries. The fourth branch established its hold over western India, where the Shakas continued to rule until the 4th century AD. The fifth branch of the Shakas established its power in the Upper Deccan. The first Shaka king in India was Mauryas or Moga, c. 80 BC, who established Shaka power in Gandhara. Mauryas issued a large number of coins, mostly in copper, and a few in silver. Mauryas adopted the title Maharaja Mahatma, the Great King of Kings, an exact Prakrit translation of the title Basileos Megalo adopted by several Indo-Greek kings. His rule extended on both sides of the Indus, from Pushkalavati on the west to Taxila on the east. Numismatic evidence suggests that Mauryas was succeeded by Azas I, who was followed by Azalizas and Azas II. Azalizas introduced coins with a typical Indian deity, Abhisheka, Lakshmi. After Azas II, the Saka territory passed into the hands of Gondophares, a Parthian satrapal system, and western Kshatrapas. The Achaemenid conquerors of northwestern India were the first to introduce the satrapal system of government in the country. The title satrap or kshatrapa is the Hellenized form of the Old Persian kshatrapavan, which means protector of the kingdom. The satrapal form of government received a fresh impetus during the Scythian rule in India, the chief feature of which was the system of joint rule of a mahakshatrapa and a satrapa. The two groups of satraps are known from the inscriptions and coins. The earlier group consists of two persons only, Bhumaka and Nahapana, belonging to the Kshaharada race, while the latter group comprises a large number of satraps known to have descended from Chashtana. The Kshaharadas. The first Ksatrap of the Kshaharada family was Bhumaka, who was probably entrusted with the task of administering the southwestern part of the empire of the Kushanas. The use of both Kharosthi and Brahmi scripts in Bhumaka's coins points to the fact that the satrapa territories not only comprised such districts as Malwa, Gujarat and Saurashtra where Brahmi was in vogue, but also some regions of western Rajasthan and Sindh where Kharosthi was prevalent. Bhumaka's successor Nahapana is known not only from his silver and copper coins, but also from several inscriptions. Several scholars identify Nahapana with Mauryas of the Peri Plus, whose capital was Minagara in Ariaki. Minagara is identified with modern Mandazar and Ariaki with Aparanta. The inscriptions of his son-in-law and General Ushavadeta, discovered at Jannar, Karli, Pune district, and Pandalena, near Nasik, show that Nahapana was master of a large part of Maharashtra. It appears from the Nasik inscription and the Jogalthembi hoard of coins in the Nasik district that the power of Nahapana was crushed by the Satavahana ruler, Gautamiputra Satakarni, who annexed the southern provinces of the Kshaharada dominions. After Nahapana's death, Chashtana was appointed by the Kushana as the viceroy of the southwestern province of their empire. Chashtana was the only member of this line who used the three scripts, Greek, Kharosthi and Brahmi, in his coin legends. The duration of his rule cannot be determined with certainty, but the end must have been between AD 120 and 130 AD. As is proved by the reference to Testines, Chashtana, and his capital Ozine, Ujjain, in Ptolemy geography. Chashtana was succeeded by his grandson Rudradaman I, a.d. 130 to 150, the most famous Shaka ruler in India. According to the Junagarh rock inscription, he won for himself the title of Mahakshatrapa. It also testifies that Rudradaman I twice defeated Satakarni, lord of the Deccan, probably Vasishtiputra Satakarni, but spared him out of filial regard for him. He ruled not only over Sindh, but also over a good part of Gujarat, Konkan, the Narmada Valley, Malwa and Kathiawar. He is famous in history because of the repairs he undertook to improve the Sudarshana Lake in the semi-arid zone of Kathiawar. This lake had been in use for irrigation for a long time, and was old as the time of the Mauryas. Rudradaman was a great lover of Sanskrit. Although a foreigner settled in India, he issued the first ever long inscription in chaste Sanskrit. Rudradaman I was succeeded by 7 weak rulers. The last known ruler, Rudrasimha III, who ruled up to AD 388, has been mentioned in Bana's Harshatarita as having been killed by the Gupta monarch, Chandragupta II. The Guptas then annexed the Saka territories. The Parthians. The Shaka domination in the northwestern India was followed by that of the Parthians, and in many ancient Indian Sanskrit texts the two peoples are together mentioned as Shaka Pallavas. In fact, they ruled over this country on parallel lines for some time. Originally the Parthians lived in Iran, from where they moved to India. In comparison with the Greeks and the Shakas, they occupied only a small portion of northwestern India in the 1st century. The most famous Parthian king was Gondophares, the period of his reign, AD 1945, being definitely fixed with the famous Takht-i-Bai inscription. It was in his reign that St. Thomas is said to have come to India for the propagation of Christianity according to the original Syrian text of the Acts of St. Thomas. In course of time the Parthians, like the Shakas before them, became an integral part of Indian polity and society. The Kushanas. The Parthians were followed by the Kushanas, who are also called Uchis or Tocharians. The Kushanas were one of the 5 tribes in which the Uchi tribe was divided. We come across 2 successive dynasty of the Kushanas. The first dynasty was founded by a house of chiefs who were called Kudphizes and who ruled for 28 years from about AD 50. Dynasty of Kudphizes. The Chinese historian Ssu Ma Qian records that a Uchi chief, Kujula Kudphizes, united the 5 tribes of the Uchis and led them over the northern mountains into the subcontinent, establishing himself in Kabul and Kashmir by defeating Hermaius the last Bactrian Greeks. Soon after the middle of the 1st century AD, Kujula died at the age of 80 and was succeeded by his son, Bhima Kudphizes, who invaded India and advanced far into the interior of North India. There are good reasons to believe that the Kushana Empire extended from the Oxus River or even beyond to the eastern border of Uttar Pradesh. Bhima Kudphizes, however, did not rule over the conquered territories in person. He appointed a number of satraps to govern the different parts of his Indian dominion. Bhima issued gold coins which show a considerable Indian influence, unlike those of his father, which included copper imitations of Roman denarii. Bhima Kudphizes was one of the few early foreign rulers who became a zealous adherent of an Indian creed, the Pasupada. All his coins shows unmistakable signs of his Saiva affiliation. The abundance of gold and copper coins issued by Bhima Kudphizes indicated the prosperity of the Kushana Empire. During his time a brisk trade in silk, spices, gems and other articles were carried on between India and China and the Roman Empire. The Roman gold coins that flowed into India influenced the gold coinage of the imperial Kushanas. Dynasty of Kanishka. The house of Kudphizes was succeeded by that of Kanishka. Its kings extended the Kushana power over Upper India and the Lower Indus basin. Under Kanishka, the Kushana dynasty flourished. The date of his accession is a matter of inconclusive debate, but 78 AD seems to be the most probable of the dates suggested so far. Kanishka started an era in 78 AD, which is now known as the Shaka era and is used by the government of India. Under Kanishka, the Kushana Empire reached the height of its power and became a mighty force in the world of its clay. In India his suzerainty extended as far south as Sanchi and as far east as Benares. In Central Asia his dominions were extensive. Purushapura, Peshawar, was his capital and Mathura was the second most important city of the empire. Kanishka is often remembered for his association with Buddhism. Himself a Buddhist convert, he convened the Fourth Buddhist Council in Kashmir where the doctrines of the Mahayana form of Buddhism were finalized. He encouraged missionary activities and Buddhist missions were sent to Central Asia and China. Kanishka was a great patron of arts and letters. The age of Kanishka witnessed the execution of the best work in Gandhara style. He is said to have constructed at Peshawar a multi-story relic tower enshrining the relic of the Buddha under the supervision of a Greek engineer Agesilaus. The Chinese traveller Huan Sang, who came to India in the 7th century, gives a detailed account of the stupa. Kanishka built a tower near Taxila and the city of Kanishkapura in Kashmir probably owed its foundation to him. Several Buddhist theologians are associated with Kanishka: Ashvaghosha, Vasumitra, Parshva, Sangaraksha, Dharmatrata and Matraketa. Nagarjuna was the great exponent of Mahayana doctrine. Charaka, the most celebrated authority on Ayurveda, was the court physician of Kanishka, and Mathara, a politician of rare merit, was his minister. Kanishka is traditionally believed to have died fighting in Central Asia. Successors of Kanishka I. Kanishka's rule lasted for 23 years. His immediate successor was Vasishka, who had a short reign and was succeeded by Huvishka. The empire of Huvishka was not less extensive than that of Kanishka. It may have spread further to the west, as a record of his reign has been unearthed at Wardak to the west of Kabul. Mathura was now a great center of Kushana power and it was adorned with monuments by Huvishka, ruled simultaneously with Vasishka II or Vajeska and with the latter's son Kanishka II. Kanishka II received, in addition to the titles of Great King, the King of Kings, Son of Heaven, Devaputra, assumed by his predecessors, the novel title of Kaisara, Caesar. Huvishka's abundant coinage, which is more variable than that of Kanishka, presents fine portraits of the king. The varied reverse devices of his coins, like Kanishka's coins, contains the figures of different deities such as Skandakumara, Visakha, Mahasena and Uma, the Alexandrian Serapis, the Greek Heracles and several Zoroastrian deities. The absence of the Buddha on his coins leads to the inference that Huvishka was well disposed towards Brahmanism. The last great Kushana king was Vasudeva I, who ruled from about the year 67 to 98 of the Kanishka era. Most of his inscriptions have been found at or near Mathura, and his coins usually bear the god Shiva and rarely any Iranian deity. The decline of the Kushana power in the northwest was hastened by the rise of the Sasanian dynasty of Persia in the 3rd century AD. One of the causes of the downfall of the Kushanas was the rise of independent republics like the Yadayas, Kunindas and Mallavas in the beginning of the 3rd century AD, who partitioned among themselves territories formerly held by the Kushanas. The rule of the Kushanas in parts of the Yamuna Valley seems to have been supplanted by that of the Nagas. Growth of urban centers. During this period, there is seen a growth of urban centers because this phase registered a distinct advance in building activities. We find the use of burnt bricks for flooring and roofing, construction of brick kilns, use of script files, and use of red pottery. Economy and coinage. This age of foreign rule had the best impact on Indian trade and commerce. Unlike other ages of foreign rule, Sakas and Kushans introduced better cavalry, use of reins, toe stirrups, turban, tunic, trousers and heavy long coat. India received a good deal of gold from Altai Mountains in Central Asia. The Kushans controlled the Silk Route which started from China and passed through their empire in Central Asia, and with the help of tolls levied from the traders, Kushans built a large empire. It is significant that the Kushans were the first rulers in India to issue gold coins on a wide scale. The development of religion. Some of the foreign rulers were converted to Vaishnavism. The Greek ambassador Heliodoros set up a pillar in honor of Vishnu near Vidisa in Madhya Pradesh. The famous Greek ruler Menander was converted to Buddhism. The Kushan rulers worshipped both Shiva and Buddha, and the images of these two gods appeared on the Kushan coins. Mahayana. One of the two sects of Buddhism that become a considerable force in India around the 1st century AD. The other sect is called Hinayana. Literally meaning, the great vehicle, the Mahayana was concerned with the salvation of the collective humanity. Society, education and culture. Though the Indians knew about the Greeks even before Alexander's invasion, their active contact started only after Alexander's invasion. Alexander came to India like a storm and went back like a whirlwind, so there was no apparent impact of his invasion. After his death came the Indo-Bactrians, Indo-Parthians, Sakas, Kushans and other alien tribes who founded their kingdoms on the Indian soil. Thereafter, India established contacts with these people for quite a long time. It was during this period that the Indians learnt from them in such fields as administration, coinage, astronomy, art, literature, religion and science etc. Political life and administration. The Kushans and the Saka rulers assumed the title of Devputra, or the son of God. They thus strengthened the concept of the divine origin of kingship. The Kushans defeated several of the Indian rulers but restored the kingdoms if they acknowledged their overlordships. It was the beginning of the feudal system in India. The Kushan Empire was divided into smaller units which were governed by the Kshatraps or satraps. It was the beginning of the Kshatrapa system. They also started the curious practice of hereditary dual rule when both father and the son ruled the same kingdom at the same time. This practice of military governorship was also started during this period, as these military governors were quite necessary to control the rebellious people. Social life. New elements in Indian social life. The Bactrians, the Parthians, the Sakas and the Kushans came into India and settled there permanently, thus becoming an integral part of the Indian society. Thus they lost their separate social identity and they became completely Indianized. Being brave and bold conquerors, they were admitted into the Indian social system as member of the Kshatriya caste. Coinage. Before the Greeks, the Indian coins were rough and punch-marked. These coins were not cast in molds and only one side bore any inscription. The Indians learnt from the Greeks the art of molding coins, and they now struck beautiful coins bearing inscriptions on both the sides. The gold coins of Kanishka were also beautiful and attractive, with artistic images of gods and goddesses on them. Religious life. Some of the foreign rulers were converted to Hinduism, and they became staunch devotees of Vishnu and Shiva. Some others embraced Buddhism. The Greek ruler Miland was converted to Buddhism. As the Greeks were primarily image worshippers, they made images of the Buddha too and started worshipping his idol. It was the beginning of the practice of idol worship among the Buddhists. The foreigners had embraced Buddhism, but it failed to satisfy their religious carvings, as the religion of the Buddha was abstract and there was no place for worship in it. It was, therefore, during the reign of the Kushan king Kanishka that Buddhism underwent radical reforms and a new branch of Buddhism, known as the Mahayana, came into being. The old sect was now called the Hinayana. Astronomy. The Indians also learned a lot from the Greeks in the field of astronomy. The Indians too honored the learned Greek astronomers and were impressed by their knowledge in this field. The renowned Indian treatise on astronomy, Gargi Samhita, asserts, the Yavanas are barbarians, yet the science of astronomy originated with them, and for this they must be reverenced like gods. Of the different principles of astronomy, the Indians borrowed many from the contemporary Greeks. Several of the Greek terms are still prevalent in Indian astronomy. Some scholars even believe that the Indians learnt from the Greeks the science of casting horoscopes. The Gandhara school of art. Before the Kushans, the Gandhara school of art was developed as a result of interaction between the Greeks and the Indians. But during the Kushan rule, the Gandhara art reached its zenith. This art had developed on the northwestern regions of India known as Gandhara. It was therefore called the Gandhara school of art, or the Indo-Greek art. The Gandhara artists built beautiful large-size images of the Buddha, Bodhisattvas and the Kushan rulers. They depicted scenes from the life of the Buddha on stone. Most of the specimens of the Gandhara art relating to this period are executed in stone. But some of the specimens found at Taxila are in stucco, lime, cement, terracotta, baked clay, and clay. The Gandhara art greatly influenced other schools of Indian sculpture. Literature and learning. The foreign rulers patronized Sanskrit, and consequently the Sanskrit scholars wrote several books of great quality. The Kushan rulers were great lovers of knowledge, and they patronized several scholars, which led to the creation of high-quality Sanskrit literature, particularly during the reign of Kanishka. Among the notable Sanskrit scholars of this period were Asvaghosha, Vasumitra and Nagarjuna. Asvaghosha wrote the Buddha Karita, Sandranandand, Saputra. Vasumitra wrote Prajnaparmita, Sutra Shastra, and Mahavibhasha. The rise of the Mahayana sect led to the composition of dramas. The Indian drama was also influenced by the Greek drama. It is on the Greek model that in the Indian dramas too the character of a clown, Vidushaka, was introduced, and the use of curtain, which is called Yavanika in Sanskrit, was started. Science and technology. The Indians learnt a lot from the Greeks in the fields of astronomy and astrology. They also learnt from the Kushans the art of making leather shoes and articles of glass. The Kushan coins were an imitation of the Roman coins. Botany and medicine. In the field of botany, chemistry and medicine, the foreign contribution to India is insignificant, as India in these fields had already made sufficient progress. Charka, the great Indian physician of this time, wrote Charka Samhita, which deals with various diseases and the effective herbs, aushadhis, to cure them. Thank you.